Since the 1930s, piping plovers in the Great Lakes region have declined drastically. In Ontario, the species was designated as endangered in 1977. The last known breeding occurred that same year at Long Point on Lake Erie. In 2015, a pair attempted to nest on Hanlan's Beach on the Toronto Islands, but the nest was flooded and failed. Finally, in 2016, after a gap of 82 years, piping plovers returned to breed successfully on the Canadian shore of Lake Ontario. The western side of Darlington Provincial Park is linked to McLaughlin Bay Wildlife Reserve by a barrier beach. Barrier beaches are dynamic habitats which change from year to year depending on lake levels and winter storms. However, this type of sandy beach with some pebbles and backed by low dune vegetation is just what piping plovers like to nest on. On May the 10th, 2016, Charmaine Anderson and Betsy Smith found 3 piping plovers there. Next day, breeding evidence was noted.
So with my friend Tyler Hoare, and the two of us were watching them, and there were 3 birds, what we know now to have been 1 male and 2 females, which we did not know then. All the birds were banded, and we noticed very shortly thereafter that one of the birds, which we now know to have been the male, was making scrapes in the sand. And then after making a couple of scrapes, we watched it sort of sidle up in behind one of those 2 female birds, and he did, which is the typical sort of pre-copulation dance that he does. He went up in behind the female, and they do like a goose stepping routine. And right after doing that, he tried to copulate with the female, which at that point we knew we were probably going to be dealing with a nesting here at Darlington. So subsequently we found out from the combinations on the bands on these birds that the male is a bird from Wasaga Beach, hatched and banded in 2015, and that the female is a bird that was hatched and banded in 2012 in Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore in Michigan. Within about a week of us seeing them making scrapes and copulating, I found the first nest at the 1 egg stage.
Once the first egg had been laid, the Canadian Wildlife Service installed a wire mesh exclosure to protect the nest against predators. In a site like Darlington, these would include ground predators and especially avian predators such as gulls and crows. At the same time, a sizable area around the nest was roped off and signs set up to keep casual beach users away. A narrow corridor was left so that people could walk along the shoreline, but signs advised them not to linger near the protected areas. Another important protective measure involves setting up a plover guardian scheme, with local birders signing up for 3-hour shifts to watch over the birds and liaise with beach walkers. Nest 1 consisted of a shallow depression lined with small pebbles and bits of broken shell, located on a wider, elevated section of the beach. It has been found that the birds readily accept the exclosure. Piping plovers lay a clutch of 4 eggs, with 1 egg laid every 2 days. Both male and female incubate the eggs. Incubation starts with the last egg and takes about 26 to 28 days. On June the 16th, the first 2 eggs hatched, and the other 2 hatched the following day. Right after hatching, the chicks are able to run and feed along the beach. Although the adults watch and guard them closely, 1 young disappeared on June the 20th, when only 5 days old. At this age, the worst predator is a loitering gull. Sometimes large dead carp were washed up on the beach, and these tended to attract gulls. However, the park staff helped by removing them promptly. Fortunately, dogs are banned from the beach at Darlington. In the early morning of June the 28th, a flurry of banding activities unfolded. At this date, the chicks were 12 days old. Here we see John Brett of the Canadian Wildlife Service taking care of the banding operation. Note that an electric soldering iron is used to seal the colour bands. Since the piping plover is an endangered species, only specially authorised persons are allowed to handle and band them. After banding, one chick became separated from the family, so it was herded back to join the others. 6 days later, the female departed, her mission accomplished. Chicks do not get flags, but all in one family get the same band combinations. 12 days after finding nest number 1, Glenn Cody then found a second nest about 300 meters to the west.
Later, I found the second nest. A fourth bird appeared. These two birds were both one-year-old birds, both hatched and banded in Michigan, one at Manistee, Michigan, and the other one from Whitefish Point. And these two birds then went on to have their own nest.
On the same morning as the nest 1 young were banded, nest 2 hatched. Unlike nest 1, nest 2 was almost unlined and quite inconspicuous. The first egg was laid on 27th of May and the fourth egg on the 2nd of June. 4 hours ago, 3 of the eggs had already hatched and the chicks were running around. The female was still on the nest. At 9:21 she stood up and removed an eggshell, then went back on again. At the actual moment of hatching, the adult seems agitated and frequently adjusts its position. It can probably hear the chick calling from within the egg. The fourth chick hatched at 9:27 and was still in the nest drying off at 9:44. Piping plovers are quite protective of the nest area around hatching time. When a harmless mourning dove landed nearby, both birds moved quickly to chase it off. The female quickly returned to the nest, checked it was safe, and disposed of the eggshell. While the female was off, the male quickly took over to brood the chick. But not for long, he left. And the female resumed. The newly hatched chick required brooding to dry off. However, the other chicks wanted to share in the brooding. Fortunately, Mom was able to eventually fit all 4 under her body. For the next several weeks, these chicks were guarded under the ever-watchful eyes of the female alone. the male having left one day after hatching. It might have gone south or possibly joined up with another female for a second nesting attempt. Higher up on the log, she had a good vantage point to watch over the chicks. Eventually, the female left too, on the 6th of August. These chicks were banded on the 7th of July, when they were 9 days old. From day one, chicks spend most of their time feeding. They have to grow up fast and may triple their weight in 2 weeks. Likewise, adults have to regain their weight lost while raising the chicks. The strand line and incipient beach pools are favourite feeding spots. It seems that algae washed up on the beach has plenty of prey hiding inside. But in the early mornings, when the birds emerge from their roost, they like to first spend some time foraging on the partially vegetated upper beach before heading down closer to the lake edge. Even when 28 days old, a chick could not easily handle a large beetle. Smaller prey would be more suitable. When we searched carefully, a variety of small-sized prey were seen on the beach. These could be potential food if the plovers in fact select them. After a good meal, it is time to rest and preen. At 13 days old, this chick knew of a secret spot to seek shade and perhaps avoid the strong breeze. It seems it really didn't like the colour band. The Nest 2 family routinely rested and preened, all within a few feet of each other, each in their own shallow scrape. However, one made a rather deep scrape. Maybe the sand was cooler beneath the surface. These two from the same brood enjoyed being close together, but an interaction with a member of another brood was quite different. Now let's take a look at how the plumage of the chick changed as it grew. The newly hatched chick with wet down appears dark and streaky. The forehead is whitish. With an enlarged view, one can see the egg tooth as a white spot at the tip of the bill. Within 4 hours, 3 chicks were dry. The downy plumage is cryptic. There is a dark line from the eye to around the back of the head and a white collar. The wing and thighs are outlined in black. There was a greyish patch on the sides of the neck where the black neck ring will eventually appear. At 12 days old, some downy feathers had been shed. The pins on the wings were broken, and feather tips had emerged. The upper parts are now more brownish, and the neck patches slightly more pronounced. The bill was all black, as were the sharp claws. At 15 days the chick should have doubled its weight. It looks rather dishevelled, as the loose down is being replaced by juvenile plumage. At 25 days the upper parts now show fresh juvenile contour feathers, light sandy brown with pale tips. Black wingtips are now easily visible. There was still some loose down left on the lower body. The downy tail was being pushed out more by the growing tail. By 27 days, only a tiny bit of tail down remained on these nest 1 young. In terms of body shape and posture, the juvenile now resembles the adult. During the last week it had been flexing its wings more often and flying a few meters at times. On 13th of July, at 27 days old, one juvenile was seen to fly a distance of about 50 meters. In fact, all 3 young were flying equally well by the end of the day. The bird now looked quite chubby. It has put on weight in preparation for southward migration. The pale fringes and tips to the coverts and scapulars will gradually wear off on the wintering grounds. After 1 more week, the wings have reached their full length. A search on July the 27th showed that for the first time the 40 days old nest 1 family did not roost at Darlington. Subsequently, only 2 young returned, so number 174 had apparently left. And to our disappointment, young number 070 was found dead on August the 3rd. The last young from nest 1, number 093, left Darlington on August the 7th. As for nest 2, the female departed on August the 6th. And sadly, on August the 8th, young number 182 was also found dead. So it was wise for young number 239 to leave quickly on August the 11th. However, on August the 17th, both number 239 and number 180 were seen again on Burlington Beach at the west end of Lake Ontario. So the last 2 young, numbers 180 and 244, were on their own until August the 13th. That morning, number 180 was seen to be flushed by a beach walker, flew out over the lake and never returned. Eventually, young number 244 departed on August the 18th. These events represent the first successful fledging of piping plovers on the Canadian shore of Lake Ontario in 82 years. We hope to see them back next year.